So now I want to talk about holding the guitar. Classical guitars, you'll see them, they hold it like this, and that's fine if you want to play like this. Nothing wrong with that. You can also hold it with this on this leg. But the important thing is to keep it balanced. And the really important thing is to take note of your left hand shape. And you want to be ergonomically correct. And what that means is that your arm is made to bend in certain ways and not in others. So when you put your hand on the fretboard, you're going to have your thumb on the back of the neck, and that's going to be kind of what's going to allow your hand to press down the strings. And then what you want to think about is the position of your hand to your forearm here. You want this natural position as much as you possibly can. If you start getting into this, if you have it down like this, if you have the neck too far down and you have to hold your hand in a position like this is going to make you tired after a while. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if it wouldn't cause some problems in here with maybe ligaments and joints and that kind of thing. So the idea is you want your hand position to be as natural as possible. So when you hold your guitar, just make sure and double check that you're not doing anything funny over here with this part of your arm, that you're keeping your thumb on the back of the neck, and that you're giving yourself a firm foundation to push down each one of these fingers using your thumb on the back. Now, as far as standing with the guitar, you're going to want to have a strap, which any local music store can help you pick out the right kind of strap. I actually use a strap that has a locking nut on it. It's called a locking strap. And it just has this little gadget on here that basically allows the strap not to slip off. It holds it on there. I just have to fasten it here, fasten it here. So when you stand up with the guitar, you want to make sure that you have a position that's comfortable, and you want to, again, take in consideration this part of your arm to make sure that it's in a natural position. If you get your strap too low and you have to do this, I remember James Hetfield used to do this, and I used to try to imitate him. He used to play with his guitar down at his knees, and he would play like this. But that doesn't work for everybody, I can assure you. You want to keep your guitar at a reasonable position, even though it might not look cool right off the bat, and keep this pretty much straight here. Now, I don't mean rigid, I just mean you don't want to do that, okay, or the other way. And as far as your right hand goes, if you're a right-handed guitarist, you pretty much want to keep this shape as well through here. You don't want to bend this way or that. Now we're going to talk about picking. And there's all kinds of different picks, and the best advice I can give you is generally thicker picks will pluck the string harder than a thin pick. And I know that probably sounds obvious, but if you're playing an acoustic guitar and you're just playing a lot of chords and that kind of thing, a thin pick might be just fine. I generally use thick picks because I use, as I've already talked about, I use size 11s for strings. And so I need something pretty substantial to be able to really get the kind of sound I want out of the string. But in general, you're going to want to hold your pick between your thumb and your index finger, like this. And then when you come to pick, you can there's basically 3 picking styles. You can either pick all down. So if I was going to play all the strings all down, I would just simply play . Or you can do them all up. So all up picking would just be like this. Okay? Or you can do down up, which means I go down on this string, and because the momentum of my hand is carrying me down, it's easy for me to come back up to play the A string. Then I come back down to play the D, and because I'm already picked that one, I'm going down, the momentum of my hand carried me down here, I just come right back up, down again, up. So it's down, up, down, up, down, up. And sometimes you'll see this referred to as speed picking. I guess it is speed picking, but because it's an economical way to pick. So if you're playing something on, let's just say on this E string, and it was fast, I could play it like this, which I'm doing all downstrokes on. I could do it like this. That's all upstrokes. Or I just simply go down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And the angle at which you pick the string, see how my pick is perfectly, it's right against the string here. If I turn it at an angle somewhat, it's going to change the tone. And I think if you experiment with this, you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. But if I picked them all just flat, that gives me a different sound than if I kind of rake the string because I'm going at an angle. Hopefully you can hear the difference. But that's basically it. Picking, you either go down or you go up or you do both, depending on what you're playing. When you first purchase your guitar, you're going to already have strings on it, more than likely. But the chances are those strings, number one, are not very good, and number two, they're going to eventually break, and that's okay because they're easily replaceable and pretty much they're cheap. You can buy an entire set for maybe $6, and that's a good set. So the first time that you break a string, you can go to the music store and ask them for that particular string. But what I normally do, depending on how old the strings are, is I'll just restring the entire guitar. And you're going to want to restring your guitar. The schedule really depends on how often you play, how much you play, but I'll give you an example. I generally restring my guitar about every 2 months. Now, when I was playing in a band and I was playing all the time, even daily, I actually changed my strings after every show. So every time I had a show, I would change the strings to new strings. So let's take a look at how you would actually restring your guitar when the time comes. Now, this first picture is actually only going to be necessary if you have a locking tremolo, where you're going to need to cut the ball off the end of the string to insert it into the locking nut on the tremolo. Now, if you don't know what any of that means, it probably means that you don't have a locking tremolo, so you will just skip this step. But if you do have a locking tremolo, you're going to have to cut off the ball of the end of the string. And I actually play DR strings, which are handmade, and they have a solid round center core. And if you just clip the ball off the end of the string without bending it first, the string can actually unravel on you. So you want to make sure that you put a 90-degree bend at least in the string before you cut the ball off, as shown in this picture. Now, regardless of whether you have a locking tremolo or not, you're going to want to insert the string where the tremolo is and then bring it up to the headstock. And now, one of the biggest mistakes I see guitarists make, even experienced guitarists, is they don't have enough wounds on the tuning key itself. So in order to cut the string to the proper length, what you'll want to do is, in this picture, this happens to be the A string, or the 5th string. So what I do is I pull the string taut or tight up to the 5th, I pull the 5th string tight to the 5th tuning key. Then I count 3 more tuning keys down, and that'll tell me how long I need to clip it. So notice I'm clipping this A string actually at the B tuning key. And that's going to give me approximately 3 wounds on the tuning key itself. Now, you'll also notice in this picture that I'm holding the string with one hand and I'm using a string winder in the other. And what you want to take special note of is that I'm winding the strings down. And I'm going to have at least 3 wounds on each string by the time that the string is tight. And the reason you need 3 is because if you have less than 3, it's easy for the string to slip and get out of tune. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of novice players make, is they'll string their guitar and only wind it up, have maybe 1 wound or even less on the particular tuning key. And you want to make sure that you have about 3. In this particular picture, you'll see the E string on the right, the A string on the left. And you'll notice how each tuning key has 3 wounds, and the wounds are spiraling downward, not upwards. So you can notice that the string from when it comes off the fretboard is actually at a downward slope going over to the tuning key, and that's because I have wound them spiraling downward. Now once you have these strings on the guitar and you've tuned them roughly, the first thing you're going to want to do is stretch those strings. And you'll see in this picture that I'm fretting the guitar, I think, at the 5th fret, and I'm using my right hand to actually pull that string straight up so that I can stretch it out, so when I tune it, it'll stay in tune. And you're going to want to do that for each of the strings, and I normally do it on the 5th fret, and I do it again on the 12th fret, just to give those strings a good tug, a good pull, so that they'll go ahead and stretch out, so when you tune it, they won't go out of tune. Now, probably for the first day that you put new strings on, they're still going to go out of tune. Normally they go flat, but probably by the second day they should have stretched pretty much all that they're going to, and then they'll start to be in tune more often. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about strings and string selection. I have a package of D'Addario strings here, and these are actually nickel wound 11s. Now when you go to the music store to ask for strings, the person behind the counter is going to say, what size do you want? And 11s are generally used for jazz players. I use them because they're the biggest string you can pretty much buy. I think you can get 12s. I'm not 100% sure, but 11s are really on the heavy side, and I like that sound because it has more tone and a longer sustain. But when you're starting out, you really want to stick with about 9s or 10s, and what that means is it's the gauge of the E string, the small E string, this particular one right here, and it's actually it lets you know what gauge it is. So you're going to want to ask for strings that are probably 9s just to start out with, and those are very light. You can go with 8s, but they break very easily. But a lot of speed players will use those because they're so flexible and they're very light. So the point is, you just want to stick with probably 9s or 10s when you first start out, and once you've built up some real finger strength, you can move on up to 10s or 11s. But it's really a personal preference. But I just want to point out that so that when you get to the music store, you'll know what to ask for. So now let's talk about tuning your guitar. Tuning is essential, especially when you're playing with a group of musicians. So if you and a bass player are sitting on a Sunday afternoon playing together, you've got to be in tune. And I know that sounds obvious, but even you can hear professional musicians sometimes and you'll hear a guitar out of tune. If you go to shows, a lot of times you'll see that between songs there'll be a person on the side of the stage that'll bring in another guitar, take the guitar they just used for the past song. So they don't have to retune on stage, because even if you play one song, your guitar can get out of tune. So that's why they'll have several guitars in the back. They will take the guitar off stage, they'll tune it, and then they'll have it ready for the musician when they go back out on stage. So when you tune your guitar, there's several different ways to do it. If you have a keyboard or if you have a piano at home, you can simply start with E, play an E on the piano and tune this string to E, tune this string to A, D, etc. Now, what if you don't have a keyboard at home? Well, the next next option you have is to have an electronic tuner like this. What this does is, when you turn it on, it has a microphone, a built-in microphone, and this mic is going to listen to the sound, and right now it's telling me that when I'm speaking around the pitch of a B, but the microphone will pick it up, and then depending on the tuner that you have, it'll have some lights on here that'll say yes, this is in tune, or it's not. Now, and you can read the instructions on exactly on your particular tuner that you buy. This one I picked up at the music store for about 40 bucks, and it's actually a metronome and a tuner built into the same box. And it's really handy, so I don't have to keep up with two different devices. But you can get a separate metronome if you want. What you're going to want to do is, to tune your guitar, is to take your tuner and then set it. Normally it'll automatically recognize which string you're trying to play, but if you first put your strings on and you don't have a clue how taut they need to be even be in the pitch range, the proper pitch range, your tuning device may not be able to tell which string that you're trying to tune. So you may have to actually program in, I'm trying to tune the E string or the A string, and you'll have to read the directions on your particular tuner to know exactly what to do. But to give you an example of how this one works, I'm going to simply play the E string, and you'll notice when I play that, see these two green lights come on to let me know that yes, it is in tune. It's a little flat. You'll notice it comes into pitch right then. Now, if I go to the A string, now you can certainly, I could take this 1/4-inch jack right out of this amplifier over here and plug it into right here, and the reason they have that is because if you're playing on stage in a club somewhere and there's lots of noise, you're not going to be able to use the external microphone. You have to plug your guitar directly into here, and then you can tune it the same way. So I would highly recommend that you get a tuner and a metronome. You can get them in two separate ones, or you can have it in one box like this. Either one works fine. A metronome is simply a device that helps you keep tempo, to help you keep in rhythm. So on this particular metronome, you can set it to different beats per minute. Like right now I have it set to 120 BPM, beats per minute. So that means it's exactly twice, you'll get a beat every, 2 beats every second. And this one actually has the ability to make a different pitch on the downbeat. And we'll talk about all of what this means later, but for right now, a metronome is simply a device that helps you keep time. Now, the other thing you can do is, you don't have to have an electronic tuner, but you have to have at least one pitch, either from a keyboard or a tuner. And what you're going to have to do is, it's really best if you can memorize what an E sounds like, and that's going to take some ear training, but over time, if you hear this enough, you're eventually going to have an idea of where your E should be. And once you have that, you can tune the rest of the strings. And let me show you how to do that. You don't want to tune the string, you don't want to turn your tuning key down to reach the pitch. You always want to turn your tuning key with the note ascending, meaning going up to the correct pitch. And the reason is, when you turn the tuning key ascending, meaning you're making the string more taut, it's more likely to stay in tune than if you back it down, in other words, going descending down to the pitch. And I'll show you what I mean. If I'm going to tune this E string, here's what I don't do. If it's sharp, I don't turn it down till I reach the right pitch. I want to go below the pitch that I'm trying to reach and then bring it back up. So here's what I mean. Listen carefully. Did you see how I did that? I went below the pitch. I'll do it again. Here I tuned it down, and on my tuner it'll tell me that it's flat. Now I'm going to bring it up. Till I hit that pitch. There it is. Okay? So you don't want to, if you're sharp, meaning you're above the pitch that you're trying to reach, you don't want to tune it down to that pitch. You always want to go below the desired pitch level and then tune it back up. Now, if you don't have a tuner, you can still tune your guitar, but you're going to have to find an instrument or a song or a keyboard or something that you can get at least one pitch off of. So let's say that you have a keyboard or you have a piano somewhere and you go and you find an E. Now, if you don't have a clue about a keyboard, to find an E, all you have to do is find the group of 2 black notes, look right to the right of that, and that's going to be your E. Okay? So once I find an E, either from another instrument, from a song that I know has a particular E in it, from another guitar that's already tuned, all I need is one string off of there to be tuned. And let's say I found that this is my E string and it's in tune. So how do I tune the 5th string, which is A? Well, I go to the 6th string on the 5th fret, and that's going to be an A. Okay? So now I play the 6th string on the 5th fret and the 5th string at the same time. And you hear how they sound out of tune. If I play them, I'm going to turn my tuning key until I hear that they're the same pitch. That's pretty close right there. So what am I actually listening for when I'm tuning a guitar? I'm listening for the sound waves, and what I'm listening for is for them to come into unison, meaning the same note. So I'll give you an example of what I listen for when I'm tuning. Let's say that this A string was out of tune. If you listen carefully, you can hear kind of a wow, 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 wow. That's what you listen for when you say, gee, that's out of tune. So what I'm going to do is bring those, and you'll notice as I bring the pitch closer to unison, those sound waves get longer and longer. So now it's in tune. So now I just tuned my A string. So I can play these 2 strings together, and that's my E and my A, and they're tuned now. Then I'm going to do the same thing to tune my D string. I hold down the 5th string on the 5th fret. That's going to be my D, and then I play my D string together. and those happen to be in tune. 5th fret, 4th string is how I'm going to tune the next string. Those are also in tune. Now, the only one that's different, not on the 5th fret, is actually, in order to tune this B string, I'm going to have to drop down to the 4th fret, 3rd string, and that's going to give me my B. It's a little bit out of tune. See if I can get it in a little better. Notice how I always drop below the pitch that I'm going for and then bring it back up. It's pretty close. Now I go back to the 5th fret, 2nd string, and I'm going to tune my top string, or the E. And those are pretty close, but just for example, I'm going to drop below and bring it up. Sounds pretty good. Now, you can also use harmonics to tune, and it's actually a more accurate way of tuning your guitar, because if you think about it, when you press down this string, it's actually going to take the pitch a little bit sharp. And what that means is, and that's because I'm pressing it down and it's shortening the string. But with harmonics, you're actually not pressing down the string as you tune the guitar. So here's one way you can use harmonics. Harmonics means you just put your finger directly over the fret. Okay, in this case, I'm going to tune the A string, which is the 5th one, to the 6th string by placing my finger over the 5th fret, directly over it, and pluck the string. And you can hear that it makes a slight sound. It's called a harmonic. And then if I play the 5th string on the 7th fret, you'll notice that those are the same notes. So I'm picking up an A harmonic from the E string here, and I'm picking up an A harmonic from the 5th string on the 7th fret. You hear how those are in tune? You do the same thing, 5th and 7th. Okay. Turn my guitar up a little bit so you can hear this better. Okay, then do the same thing on the 4th string, right over the 5th fret, and on the 7th. Okay, and tune those. Now when you get to your 2nd string, or your B string, you can't do, see how those are different? So to tune the B string, you actually can't use harmonics for that particular string, so you'll have to drop back down to your standard tuning. So I'm holding down the 4th fret, 3rd string to get my B there. I tune that. Then I can go back to using harmonics for the 5th and 6th string.